Hello my friends, today's video is something really cool because it's about a Praesidus watch. If you've never heard of a Praesidus, effectively they're a company that make watches which are reissues with modern materials of watches from a very long time ago, all military spec watches, military issue watches, or watches with military provenance. Today's watch is no exception. This is a little known one. This is why I think it's a bit of a hidden gem, a bit of a military icon, because it's a watch which wasn't actually issued by a government to the soldiers. This is where it's really interesting because this is abbreviated as a Rec-Spec watch. That means reconnaissance specification, because there was a team of elite dudes from America that went to Vietnam during and actually before as well, doing some reconnaissance to help with the war effort out there. Bit controversial, but there's a whole other type of video. Anyway, these guys, they weren't issued watches and they didn't want to stand out, so they just went into the Asian markets and they bought watches, and they were the Seiko 6119 8090s. There was a few other mixed in the mix as well, but predominantly they had a watch that looked like this one. Now what they did is they wore these watches and they actually found that they were fantastic in the field doing all of their missions that they were doing out there. And the name of this group was the MACVSOG, and what that is an abbreviation for is they were the Military Assistance Command Vietnam Special Operations Group. Now if you want a watch that's got that kind of cool backstory to it, this is a reissue and an amazing reinterpretation. Let's get into this watch. Now you've had the backstory and the history. Is the watch actually any good, or have they messed it up? Let's have a look. So as you can see, straight off the bat, it looks like a Seiko because effectively the design is a cut and paste of that Seiko from that era, from the 60s. You can see why they have chosen it, because as you can see from the indices, they really stand out. They're very bold. I love the slightly italicized effect with the Arabics, and it's just got that clarity. I think it's even better with a matte finish dial, which I've got on this version. There are other colours available. As you can see from the website, there's a brown one and there's different colour variations with the Lume in the indices. What are you getting for your $295? This is better than Seiko money in my opinion, and it's got a Seiko specification, and in some respects slightly better. The weight of this watch on this leather strap is only 63 grams. Case size is a bit bigger than that original piece from the 60s. This is a 37.5 is what I measured from across the case size. Call it 38. Wears just like a 38, so it's a perfect everyday wear watch, very comfortable. It's going to fit on most wrist sizes. The height of the watch is including this domed K1 mineral crystal, which has a blue hue AR coating and sapphire coating as well, just to really aid with the scratch resistance, 11.7. That sounds quite thick, but actually in reality it's not as bad as that because of the fact that the crystal takes up nearly 3 millimeters of that height. The length of the watch is only 44.5, so it's not going to look long and gangly on your wrist. And the good thing is as well, for strap changes, you've got drilled lugs, and the other benefit is the straps all come with quick release, so it's nice and easy to swap out. Doesn't have much water resistance, just like you imagine a dress watch to be. It's 30 to 50 meters, so it's just a splash resistant watch. I think it's going to be fine for most situations. I think the original was fine, as they proved, and that had the same sort of specification for water resistance as this one, so I would not worry. If a dress watch from the 60s can survive reconnaissance missions in Vietnam, I think this will be okay. They made the crown bigger, which is good because this is only 3.5 millimeters. God knows what it was before. It is very small, but they've made it easier to operate, which is a positive. The crown is attached inside to an NH36 Seiko movement, so still fitting with the Seiko theme. The movement itself is very good. Date complication, as you can see here. But the thing is, what they've done is very clever. Is as per the original, you've got a black and white situation going on here. Black for the date, and for the day it is a white wheel. And what they've done, even as an extra, that is a custom day wheel. What they've done is normally Saturday would actually be a different colour, but they've kept it black just like the original, and then Sunday, as per the original, is blue. So how clever is that? So that's the specifications covered. As you can imagine, you're going to need this kind of specification for practicality. It's got enough of everything to do it right. It's subtle, it's comfortable to wear in all different types of conditions, and as you can see here, I have a 7.25 inch wrist, and this is going to fit anyone really, because I've got this tight and you can see there's only 2 more holes left, but look how much more scope there is for different wrist sizes. I'd say their straps are a little bit too long in my opinion, but I'd rather it too long than not long enough. So you can always swap it out if it bothers you, but this is a gorgeous strap, very nice quality, and I would say it suits better on a NATO style strap because it's a military style watch, and NATO's a far more adjustable and better in sweaty, wet, humid conditions, which if you're going to pay proper tribute to a watch like this, that's the kind of strap I'd imagine people would have worn it on. Now, let's get a few negatives out of the way first. The first one is the water resistance. I think this has been an opportunity to have upgraded it a bit. It's still got a push fit case back. Beautiful case back though, with some nice satinized finish, no polished elements here, but I still think the water resistance could have been upgraded. But the biggie, the biggest one of all, is how awkward this crown is for manual winding. There is a technique to it. You literally have to rub it like this. But it feels like it's just not the right way to be winding a watch. You really want to be able to get both hands on it, but that's impossible. You cannot do that. So you have to basically wind the watch by rubbing it from behind, which sounds rather naughty. And then popping it out is okay. You can get a good fingernail under there, but it's a bit awkward, to be honest with you. And then the changing of the time is fine once the crown is out. It's totally acceptable, but it's still a little bit fiddly. I still wish for your $300 that they could have just put sapphire with AR coating. Why did they go to, I know K1 Mineral's good. It's actually very shock resistant and it is arguably tougher than sapphire. It doesn't shatter quite as easily. It's more likely to take abuse, but it can still scratch. But it's a military style field watch. I don't think you're going to worry about a few knocks here and there. It is not actually a dress watch. You're not going to be wearing it for that, really. Even though I like to have a spec monster and say it's got the best of everything, sometimes the specification is right. It's right sometimes to have acrylic crystal or a really good quality mineral with a scratch coating on it. There is some kind of reasoning behind it. It's not just a case of being cheap. They don't always cheap out and say, oh, we've only put mineral in to save a couple of bucks. It's not always the case. It's actually appropriate for the clarity, the legibility. It really suits this style of watch. And if you're really worried about scratching the watch, I think you just either need to be a bit more careful or realise that K1 Mineral with a sapphire coating is very unlikely to get scratched unless you are an absolute brute. And what you are going to need when you're out and about doing your missions in day-to-day life is a bit of Lume is always good. Lume is fantastic in the Arabics here, as you can see, it really glows, lovely colour. But the hands, as usual, you would expect with very thin, polished hands with not much Lume in there. They don't stand out spectacularly, but for everyday use, it's totally acceptable. This isn't a dive watch, but it does the job. In regards to the overall fit and finish of this watch, I'd say it's above what you'd expect for a $300 watch because the brushed elements are really lovely, so beautifully done, really smooth. All the finishing is extremely good actually, to be honest with you, as is this bead blasted case at the back, very neatly done. And I like that they've lined it up pretty much bang on straight. So there's no sharp edges anywhere, which is another thing which is very important to the feel of a watch, the quality. Polish elements, which is subtle, just a bit of chamfering here on the lugs and then on this bezel here. Again, that's been done very nicely, very smooth. The transition between the polished parts and the brush parts is extremely neat. There's no over polish or over brushing going on anywhere. It's been extremely well machined, and that's a real sense of the quality you should expect really from Praesidus. I've had nothing but good finishing on their watches. They're very simple, minimalistic watches. So you've got to get it right, otherwise it stands out like a sore thumb, doesn't it? Then the dial is really lovely. This is the one that's not the sunray version or anything like that. This has got a lovely popcorn effect. It's got a very dappled, textured finish, which really aids the legibility, and that contrast between the indices and the dial really helps them pop. As same with the polished hands, they really contrast against that dial. And as you can see, benefits with the AR coating and mineral being good for not being too reflective. The clarity on this thing is excellent. Then you've got the big, beautifully framed date and day complication window here. The framing around that is done so well. It's a very neatly bead blasted frame that goes around that, and that again blends in with the theme of the watch. And it's just subtle. It's so lovely that they've also done a custom day wheel, which is just an extra attention to detail, which they didn't have to do. And that is what I love. I just think that is a real little game changer when it comes to what you don't normally get for £300. So they've gone to the extra effort just for little tiny things like that to pay tribute to how the original watch looked. But then it's got the subtle, very subtle upgrades, which takes it to a modern standard and gives it that charm, which we're looking for in a military field watch, because this has got that story behind it. Praesidus actually met with the chap that was in that special operations group by the name of John Tilt Striker Mayer. You couldn't get a more tough, military standing American dude, and they met with him. And he's written books about being in this special group, and they obviously got information about the watches, and this is how they're inspired to make this watch. So the story alone is enough to buy one of these. But then throw in the mix of fact, it's actually a very well made watch, and it looks good, it's attractive, it's got Seiko vibes, and you don't have to spend £1,000, dollars, euros on a vintage one of these kinds of watches. For 300 bucks you can get a modern, respectful interpretation of that piece with a warranty, hand assembled in America. It's just ridiculous that you can get such a cool watch for so little, and that's why I'm so thrilled to share it with you guys. Let me know what you think, but I think this is an absolute winner. See you in the next one. Bye for now.